If you're going to have a dog, you need to be responsible. That dog clearly needs to go for a walk. Duh.
Alright, so it took a little while to find a copy episode of the reboot again that steals directly from the original, but this one pretty much takes the cake as the most accurate imitation of an episode since Secret Swapper of Doom, I think. Let me give you the premise and see if it sounds familiar at all. In this episode, a character comes across a pet that they wish to keep, and things seem all fine and dandy until it is revealed that the pet they are taking care of is evil, and has been manipulating them into working for the pet so that the pet can raise its army of other pets to achieve power over society. Barring a few differences here and there, that is the synopsis of this week's episode, and you guessed it, it's Catmandu all over again.
Smarmaduke, did you chew my slippers?
Did you chew my bone?
Today's featured episode is titled The Bubble Sitters Club, loosely based on the Babysitters Club book series. Although I've never read them, so I don't have much to draw comparisons between. I was always more of a Magic Treehouse kind of kid when I was younger, but that's besides the point. Anyways, in this episode, Bubbles is in dire need of obtaining a pet puppy that she wants to spend time with, but her odds of getting one aren't looking so good. The episode kicks off with a reference to Marmaduke in a comic strip form, which is pretty subtle and faithful, similar to the way the Tintin reference was handled in Summer Bummer. Then the episode really gets into the meat of things with the professor explaining to Bubbles that pets are a lot of hard work and require an incredible amount of responsibility. Ergo, the professor doesn't think she's old and responsible enough to carry out the liability of having a pet, and therefore tells her that she can't get one. I like how while she's being lectured, she's not paying attention to the milk and the whole container just spills onto the table. Subtly emphasizes her irresponsibility. And that's good! In response to this, Bubbles asks the professor to name 3 times she wasn't responsible, and lo and behold, next, we get a montage of Sesame Street numbers listing off 3 different times she was irresponsible. The first time, Bubbles forgot to turn off the water in the bathroom.
Hey, Bubbles, did you turn off the water in the...
Holy shit, that was funny. Like, damn, that was actually good. Second up, we see Blossom tell her to watch the Gangrene Gang, minus Ace, who I assume was out shooting a music video with gorillas that day, while she goes to get the police. Bubbles gets distracted by a butterfly, and they manage to escape, no questions asked. And third, Bubbles is steering a ship that belongs to some pirate dude while he runs to the restroom and manages to crash it into an iceberg. Just like number 1, this was funny because of how sudden it was. That's kind of what benefited the original a lot. Speed. I know I'm preaching to the choir at this point, but the reboot is in desperate need of some speed. Anyways, Bubbles is proven wrong instantly and begins to feel a little down before Blossom points to an ad in the paper that advertises that there's some old woman in search for a dog sitter, which the professor assigns to her as a little test of sorts. If she can prove herself by properly taking care of this dog, she can get one herself permanently. So, Bubbles goes to this creepy lady known as Mrs. Gregory and brings her dog back home, where she completely fails to keep him under control within a matter of seconds. No, literally, we get a transition via Polly's face, that's the dog's name by the way, Polly, akin to the classic Superman or Batman transition, and we're back in the Utonium residence with Buttercup and Blossom stumbling upon the absolute cutthroat mess that Bubbles and the dog caused.
What did the dog do to the house?
One thing he did is still behind the couch.
Classy. And so, Blossom suggests Bubbles take him for a walk while she and Buttercup clean up the mess for her. After all, the dog has way too much pent-up energy to the point where he just keeps ramming his face into the couch over and over and over again.
I'm walking, walking. Bubbles is walking. Time to go. Kick your knees, kick your toes. Walking, walking. Polly is walking.
Gotta admit, I find this song pretty cute, as basic as it is. Pretty soon, Polly begins begging Bubbles for random things like a piece of pie and a $100 suit and a treadmill. Yeah, I'm not really sure why this dog is begging for all of these things, but Bubbles soon finds that while she was rambling on about putting her foot down, Polly manages to rob a diamond store and get away with a big bag of loot, which leads us to the big reveal of the episode.
Stop! Did you steal those diamonds?
No. We did.
You can talk? And you're smarmy. Are you Smarmaduke?
That's right. Turns out Polly here was actually a supervillain the whole time, who's infamously known for committing burglaries and eating garbage since 1982. Well, you are what you eat, I guess. And this dog must be immortal or something, because there ain't no way there's a dog still alive today that was around in 1980 frickin' 2. Pugface Polly is his name, and blackmailing Bubbles is his game, as he essentially forces her into working with him against her will by threatening to send her to jail along with him if she were to try and turn him in. Of course, Bubbles, being the oblivious child that she is more concerned with not being able to own a dog rather than, oh, I don't know, living in a cold, empty cell for several years of her life.
If you're a criminal, then there's one thing I have to say to you. Bad dog. Bad dog.
Next, we get a second montage, because apparently one wasn't enough this time around, of various newspapers popping up on screen telling of various crimes Bubbles and Polly managed to get away with, along with this one joke about alliterative titles, which amused me more than I think it would the majority.
Bad guy dog friends strike again. Oh my gosh.
Boy, the news sure is boring today.
Most people would probably be fixated on Bubbles having the ability to replicate a 1900s announcer voice in this shot, but I think what I caught a glimpse of is actually more interesting. If you alert your eyes to the corner of Bubbles' newspaper, there you'll see a reference to a character that technically hasn't been introduced yet as of this point in the series. Fascinating. Strangely enough, nobody realizes Bubbles is the culprit of all of these various crimes, despite her photo obviously being a dead giveaway on the back of the newspaper, and it takes until Blossom figures it out for anyone to actually realize Bubbles is behind this, because apparently Townsville is just as stupid as ever. Bubbles' sisters then proceed to meet her at a car dealership where she and Polly are in the process of stealing a getaway car to, well, get away.
Blondie, Bubbles, is coming with us.
Yeah, but not before we knock off a few of your 9 lives!
Buttercup, that's cats.
Yeah, like Catmandu. Literally, the only differences between the two episodes is that, go figure, this one features a dog instead of a cat, and Bubbles is blackmailed rather than the professor hypnotized. And I guess the cat from the original also had a plan with this giant laser contraption, whereas Polly just goes around robbing places. But in principle, these episodes basically have the same concept. Now, Polly does use a literal dog whistle to call on his backup support, which I did find kind of amusing since it doesn't make a sound and all. I thought that was clever. And most of these names are pretty good too, like Al Capone and Herman Shepherd. You know, they're play on words and the names of different breeds of dogs and stuff like that. Aside from the last one, which I think kinda landed on a dud.
Herman Shepherd, La Femme Akita, Two Tails Mulligan, the Butt Sniffer.
That's essentially 3 separate montages in this episode alone. Geez, like, I know this show seems to love using that technique for some reason, but 3 in 1? I think that's a record. Oh yeah, and remember Mrs. Gregory? Turns out she wasn't who we thought she was.
But you're a human.
Am I? Or am I a dog with a duck body?
Sure. Okay. Blossom and Buttercup end up fighting the hounds and beating them all up, and then Polly makes Bubbles try to leave with him while her sisters call her to the other side, basically in the exact same way that Princess did this in Presidential Punch-Out. Same character and all. And just like last time, Bubbles ultimately yells in frustration and chucks the car at Polly, crushing him underneath and throwing him in the slammer, putting an end to his blackmailing tactics once and for all. Well, not for all, he comes back in a later episode. You know what I mean. At the end of the day, the professor asks her if she learned a lesson in all this, and Bubbles proceeds to explain that dogs are a big responsibility, but it's okay because she has a kitty now, and randomly, Mojo is just there, dressed like a cat for no reason. Literally, for no reason whatsoever. He's just there, dressed as a cat. What's the punchline here? LOL, so random the end? Mojo looks like a cat? Haha, funny? There's no setup to this. There's no punchline. It's just Mojo dressed like a cat. This would have made loads more sense if Mojo were actually present for some portion of the episode before this point, you know? Rather than just shoehorning him in there like that. Like, in Monkey See, Doggy Do, the reason for Mojo turning into a dog at the end was because the Anubis head broke on him and completely backfired, leading the girls to take him in as a pet. There was a reason and a setup for that conclusion. This is just like, oh look, Mojo's a cat, ha ha ha, except nobody's laughing. Now, even if that last joke fell flat, I don't think this episode is too bad, but nothing really stands out either. I mean, the villain is literally just a pug in a suit, which isn't very unique or doesn't stand out amongst the other animals in the show, so I'll probably completely forget about this guy within a couple of reviews, and then somewhere down the line I'll be like, oh yeah, that guy was a villain. The plot's a total ripoff, like I said. I mean, there's some differences here and there, but like the concept's the same, and I'll just about leave it at that. Nothing truly remarkable to see here.